everyone. We're going to get started with our graduate student panel comprised of several of our student ambassadors. All right. We really believe in the intentionality of getting you as much information as possible. One of the questions we always get is, what is the transition from non-graduate student life to graduate student life? What is it all about? What are the internships? Can I take courses across programs? I know you've talked a lot about that in your program sessions, but it's always great to hear the perspective from students who may be outside of the programs that you have particularly been admitted to. I want to offer my thanks to Robbie Powers, who is the Director of Student Affairs at the School of Media Studies, for facilitating today's graduate student panel. I'll come back later on, just before we head out to our reception downstairs in Star Foundation, and give you more information quickly about next steps. So Robbie, thank you.
Thank you, folks. So my role as Director of Student Affairs in the School of Media Studies is really to support students with everything that happens outside of the classroom, which includes everybody's transition into the role, into their roles as graduate students, into the work that they do with their faculty advisors and their peers, and to really think about what they're gaining from their programs while they're here. And so there's a me in every one of our graduate programs here in the School of Public Engagement. So you might have met Phil Acree from the International Affairs program, Laretha Slaughter, who works with Milano, Leslie Piner-Farrell does double duty in the role for TESOL, and we have colleagues in other programs as well here throughout the graduate programs here at School of Public Engagement. So there is a team of individuals here to really support you. So think about what's happening today and think about the questions that you may have for your program, and we can connect you with those folks. So today we have a panel of individuals. I'm going to have them introduce themselves and really get started with talking a little bit about, microphone work, great. If you can take a minute, introduce yourselves, tell us what program you're in, and talk a little bit about one of the most exciting experiences on your pathway to grad school. Think about that. So one of the things that you might have thought about coming into grad school that you wish folks knew here. We're going to do a little bit of a moderated panel up here first, and then we'll go into a Q&A with folks in the audience.
Hello. Okay, hi. My name is Lorraine. I am in the MA in International Affairs program. I am from the Philippines, so I'm an international student, and I moved here from Senegal. And that was kind of one of the most exciting things about grad school for me, was I wasn't just starting this new phase in my life wherein I was beginning a new form of studies, but I was also experiencing a whole new culture, a whole new city, and that has made it super, super great so far.
My name is Clare Marinello, and I'm in the MA TESOL program. TESOL stands for Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages. Like many people who work in that field, I started teaching English with my only qualification being that I spoke English. I did get like a 5-week certificate course to start with, and then they threw me into a classroom that was next door to an active commuter rail line, had no functional heat, and was full of refugees from all over the world, and had no textbook, and said, Claire, have fun. So for me, the most exciting part of going back to school was to finally get a little theoretical backing for the practice I had already dived into. I already had a few years of experience, but I was ready to learn more.
Hi, I'm Alex Scherer, and I am in the PUP program, the Public and Urban Policy. And while I didn't come from anywhere nearly as great or as cool as these two, I think moving to New York City similarly was really amazing. I didn't even come to one of these great admitted students days. I, just kind of came to New York City just without really ever being here before. So yeah, getting involved in like the New York City way of life. But on top of that, I think it was so exciting and amazing to be able to sit in classrooms where the professors were currently or spent their entire lives in the field doing what they were teaching. So we really do come from like a point of practitioners as far as the professors go, and it was really great to just be able to open my horizons to what they were saying and their perspectives.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rokia Semake. I am in my 3rd semester in the Media Studies program. I'm originally from New York, so I grew up in Harlem. And I guess exciting thing about being in grad school that I wasn't prepared for, I mean, I'm gonna go for a more light one. Recently, I did a shoot yesterday and then returned my equipment because you can have access to equipment here. And one of the things they have are projectors. And so I took one of those home, and that was really nice. I know that's like a very light kind of thing, but in the midst of having it at my house, I have white walls, I was able to actually discover like a potential project. So I guess like there's always kind of a way to I guess create. I think that's been the biggest thing. It's like I'm always kind of in a state of creating something, even if I'm not necessarily realizing it, which is really, really nice. But they also have projectors, so that's also nice.
Thank you, folks. One of the things that came up that we were talking about earlier was about balancing work and school life. And I know specifically Alex and Rokia, you have a lot of jobs that you're juggling. Do you folks mind talking a little bit about what your work life is like and how you balance the school work and whether you're full-time or part-time in the program?
Okay. Yes, so I am part-time in the program, and I currently have 3 campus jobs on campus, and then I have like technically 2 other jobs that I'm doing off campus, along with all like my schoolwork and personal projects. For me, the balance, I think I came in with really strong time management skills when that was something like organizing, something I've always been like pretty good at. But I think what having so many things to do and being so busy, you just become a lot more efficient with time. So aside from the organizational aspects, you know you only have a certain amount of time to do certain things. And so you need to be very like oriented in that and attention specific. So I waste very little time. Like I'm not a time waster. Like at this point, I even time my yoga. Like it's gotten to a point, but it doesn't feel, I have yet to feel overwhelmed, which is really nice. And a lot of the reasons why I'm actually doing so many part-time jobs is because a lot of these jobs are not time intensive. Like I'm probably making about 20 hours, a little more than that, every week. And that actually gives me a lot more time to focus on my schoolwork and to work on the personal projects that I'm working on. So it actually feels quite like fine. But I will say, just make sure that you get a planner. It's very helpful. Use the reminders on your phone, and really get into the habit of doing something when it appears versus like putting it off. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I think seconding a lot of that, it comes about how do you use your time. You work smart, not hard, and but yeah, I'm a Morgan Stanley Community Development Fellow, which I was connected to actually through the New School, and that's about 20 hours a week. And I am also a student ambassador, which is maybe more or less like 3 hours a week, and then I'm also a TA for the Urban Policy Analysis Lab course, and that's like between 4 or 5 hours a week at the most. So yeah, I think a lot of it just comes down to balancing, creating a work plan, creating, your priorities list. What do you need to do now? I work a lot on the weekends on homework, so whether or not I have a huge social life, that's totally something else to talk about. But I think you run into a lot of people in grad school that, like, for me at least, doing my homework and doing my jobs, like this is what I'm interested in. It's what I want to be doing. I wouldn't be working at these 3 different places if I didn't want to be. So, you run into a lot of type A people in grad school. So you invest your time in what you want to, and this is really the place where you get to make those decisions.
I would also add, really, really quickly, schedule your time for relaxation as well. Like, I know self-care is like a really big buzzword right now, but it's actually very real. So when I was saying, like, in terms of balancing, I do make sure to plan for time to just take care of myself, whether that means just watching television, taking a bath, washing my hair. You want to make sure that you're doing that as well.
Alex mentioned working as a teaching assistant, and Claire, I know you're a research assistant, right? So can you talk a little bit about how you got connected with that role, what it entails, and how it enhances your academics?
Yeah. So the research assistant positions, those vary department by department. For the TESOL MA program, they usually only have like one for the whole department for the semester. And basically whatever the department is trying to move forward, the faculty are trying to get done, the research assistant becomes involved in it. In my case, we've been working to develop a new curriculum for our free English lessons that we offer to the New York City community. The challenge there is, we don't really know who the students will be until they walk through the door. And semester by semester, we may be working with teachers who this is their first time ever teaching English, or they've been doing it for 10 years, but they never had a degree in it before. And in many of our locations, we don't have the luxury of a textbook for every student or a projector even. So I've been helping one of the professors and then the woman who coordinates the outreach. I've been helping them do the research and start putting together a proposal for how we can make a curriculum that is like supportive enough to be helpful, but also loose enough that we can apply it to a wide variety of contexts. The way it worked out is that I'm actually also in a class called Practitioner Research, so I'm actually both doing the research as the paid research assistant and getting some academic credit for very similar connected activities. So that's been an interesting thing for me, especially since it's my last semester, to kind of be a capstone professional project style job.
That's amazing. That's a really great example of the type of work that happens when we combine thinking about social justice and its connection here at the new school, its connection in the city, and the opportunities our academics have to connect with that. Lorraine and Alex, I was hoping that you folks could talk about some of your experience opportunities that you had. So I know Lorraine is doing IFP this summer, and Alex is working with a lab that connects her in the city with different engagement opportunities. And I thought you folks could talk about that. Lorraine, do you mind starting?
Yes, so this summer I'm going to be going on the International Field Program. That is a program that is hosted by the International Affairs Program, but it's open to anyone in the university. And basically what we do is every summer we spread out around the world and we work with local communities and organizations in different countries. This year I'm going to be going to Havana in Cuba. But we also have programs this year in Ethiopia, South Africa, Brazil, and the Balkans. And so you were speaking about social justice, and a lot of the issues that we cover are very much in that realm. So we cover things like migration, gender equality, development economics, and really in the spirit of the new school, what makes this program, the International Field Program, different from just general study abroad is that part of it is also very critical of the kind of structures that have been in place, and we're really looking at how we can make these partnerships a lot more sustainable and a lot more responsible. So we're not just in there for volunteerism. It's something that we're doing that we're connecting with other field programs that are happening in previous and also successive years. So it's very much an ongoing process, and it's something that we're really proud of doing, and something that I hope that you guys would be able to participate in.
So bringing it back to New York City, a lot of the public and urban policy lab projects, the live clients are city agencies. Right now, to name a few, one of the projects is with the mayor's office to end gender-based violence. And some of the other, we have worked with HPD, the Brooklyn Chamber, so a lot of different city agencies specifically, as well as some community nonprofits. But as far as, a lot of the topics are and issues that you work on and study and develop policy proposals for are issues around social justice. So specifically the project right now, the group that's working with HPD is looking to mend the HPD's housing lottery process. So when you sign up to be a part of an affordable housing development, they're now trying to move toward making their lottery process a lot more gender neutral and catering to transgender, non-binary, non-conforming people. And so, yeah, a lot of the projects are very geared toward how do you approach this in an equitable way? How do you define equity? And how do we highlight and empower groups that have historically been disenfranchised and otherwise just totally eliminated from spaces of receiving help and, subsidy, whether it's for housing or public assistance. So, yeah, social justice rings throughout the new school and doesn't stop at the public and urban policy program.
So IFP, I know, is available to students throughout the school, specifically SPE, as well as the broader group. Have you folks had courses where you're taking classes with people outside of your program? And this is kind of open-ended to anyone on the panel. Does anyone want to talk about any interdisciplinary work that you've done or any notable experiences working in groups with other students from other programs?
Well, I do find that a lot of the media studies programs, the classes, will be filled with other students from across disciplines. So yeah, that's happened quite frequently. I know for my creative screenwriting class, for example, which I took last semester, there were people in my class who were in the creative writing program. Some people were in the media management program. So you definitely come across people from across disciplines, which is really helpful because, especially for a class like that where it was like script writing, and everybody was kind of like writing from their perspective, both as academics, but also like their perspective as people. And it was just quite amazing to watch how differently everybody was thinking about going about writing. So yeah, I find that it's a frequent experience, and I'm looking forward actually to taking some class in different schools. I'm just trying to figure out what that will be and when.
I think by design, a lot of the SPE programs, as you were saying, are very interdisciplinary. And so in that sense, it's very flexible. So if you're in the International Affairs program, for instance, but you have interest in, say, design, a lot of our students have taken design courses, something that I'm actually thinking of doing. So one of the things that you could do is your research that you do or some of the information that you find out about, let's say, gender violence, you want to visualize that data. So you go to a data visualization class in Parsons, and that's how you're connecting those two different things.
Yeah, that's a really great example. One of the other big interdisciplinary kind of crossovers that you see in public and urban policy is urban planning. And I know those disciplines are very closely intertwined, and so a lot of my colleagues have taken courses at the Parsons School with, whether it's design and infrastructure or some sort of studio around like city planning. So it's very interdisciplinary. But I think for me personally, one of the most interdisciplinary courses I took was housing, finance, and real estate development. I saw students actually from the Cardozo Law School came and took it. So that was an interesting perspective. Also some of the design and urban ecologies, Parsons students, as well as some undergrads, which that course is, so that course was highly interdisciplinary in nature.
I'm going to switch gears slightly. thinking about your experience with our faculty. So I know, Rokia, I'm going to ask you to start, but talking a little bit about the story we were talking about earlier, but if anybody else has any experiences they want to add, what have been your experiences connecting with faculty, creating those relationships, and how have they enhanced your experience in the program?
So you find that professors and faculty are super willing and open to help you in any way that they can. One of the ways that happened for me recently was last semester I took a course, Script to Screen. It was taught by Steele Philippek, and he then offered the students in the class an opportunity to do a features workshop with him. And this is something that he does as a workshop he's kind of been doing for quite some time, and he actually charges for it. So he decided to do this with us for free, like on a Sunday before semester started, 4 hours, and he helped us pretty much develop the core structure of a feature-length film, and to then be able to turn that into a treatment. And it was probably the best 4 hours I've spent, in the sense, because for me personally, I do want to write. And that was a practice that I was very intentional about coming to school to learn. So it was just helpful that it having the opportunity to do that in a much more intensive way, and not to have to think about the finances behind that as well. And he's also just a phenomenal professor. He's a great orator and just knows how to get you to the point very quickly. So that was a really phenomenal experience.
I mean, I would also say the beauty of many of our SPE programs is that you're in a small class every time. And in the TESOL, I mean, I think the most people I've seen in one classroom was 10. It's frequently even smaller than that, which means there's a lot of opportunity to connect one-on-one or in small groups with a professor. If you have something that's, related to this course, but it's sort of a tangent, they still have the patience and the time and the opportunity to talk through that with you. And in fact, I came into the MA program not really thinking about pursuing my own personal research, but I wrote a short presentation for a specific class, and the professor actually came to me and said, you know what, I think with a little more practice and slightly broader idea, you could pitch this as something you could present at conventions, TESOL conventions around the country. And he encouraged me and helped me write my first ever proposal with an abstract. And I actually was accepted at 2 separate conventions for professional conventions, and was able to present on what was kind of a funny topic, the influence of Star Trek on the English language and what that means for how we teach English. It is, as far as I can tell, a question no one else has ever asked, and I wouldn't have had a chance to ask it if the professor hadn't encouraged me.
I was just going to kind of wrap up the moderated portion before we go to the Q&A with just kind of a little bit about what your experience has been either transitioning to New York, or if you're from New York, kind of how has that been an experience for you? Has it changed in any way coming to grad school and working part-time and going to school full-time or part-time? I don't know what each of you has a very unique experience, so I don't know who wants to start off.
I mean, I had already been living in New York City for about 2 years, and because I had a job in the financial district. So for me, it was a question of slightly adjusting my commute to allow for being in Union Square more often. But I think that is a way to remind yourself that at a school like this, the city is a part of your campus. And especially, I hear it in a lot of different programs. In our case, we are in community and public schools on the weekends and at night, teaching English to non-English speakers who live in this city. They are our neighbors and a part of our community, and we're very connected to that. And I know it's also a huge priority for the PUP program to have those connections as well.
Yeah, I think for me, so I grew up outside of Chicago area, and then went to undergrad in Baltimore, and then traveled up here for grad school. But as far as adjusting to life here, I had to buy a new winter coat. And actually, we recently just had this conversation around investing in a winter coat. Just as far as, the winters are pretty brutal, but the summers are fantastic. I spent my first summer here last year, and it was great. You're a train ride away from the beach. You're where, you can utilize, the different, you have Central Park, you have Washington Square Park, that's, you can definitely make the city your campus. So, I don't know, I'd say my transition here, I think took I would say 8 months. And then after that, I really felt solidly settled here in this big city.
I think for me, one of the most challenging but also exciting things was throwing myself into this situation where I had to be very independent to survive, because I came here by myself and I didn't really know anyone, and so I had to really just figure out how to make connections. And this is true for everyone, regardless of whether you've lived here for a while or if you're just moving here from a different city or a country. You really have to find your people. And that was one of the things that really helped me adjust. Was I kind of just went to all sorts of different events that the new school had so that I could connect with people who had the same interests and find that community. And we also have a ton of different resources that I found really helpful, like the ISSS, 3 S's, right? International Student Scholar Services. And you might find a different, resource for you that specifically will help you with your challenges. So really look for those, because we have a ton.
For me personally, I grew up in New York, so I'm originally from Harlem, and I guess it wasn't so much a transition as much as it was an adjustment, because now I'm a student in New York versus just being an independent adult in New York. So really that adjustment to my schedule and adjusting for the commute, and and you're used to commuting, but it's still, I'm in a different area. I still have 35, 40-minute commute back and forth. So I agree with you about that. That's something that you then have to start thinking about, because especially if you have a job, you just want to make sure that you're planning and looking ahead, and like I said, taking care of yourself, and figuring out the ways to make life convenient for you. So at this point, most of my shopping gets done in this area. So in terms of my groceries and buying toiletries, things like that. And it's helpful because Union Square is a really popular area. So there is a lot here. Something I would add to that too is budgeting. Budgeting. I started budgeting, and it's really changed my perspective on how I spend my money. In the sense of actually, it's lowered a lot of my anxieties around money because I'm not so stressed out. So really figure out a budget, because what ends up happening, especially with the adjustment of having classes at night, you now find yourself having to eat meals more often outside, and that racks up very, very quickly. So really think about what is a realistic budget for you, and then stick to it.
Great. So this is actually an opportunity for you folks to ask our panelists questions. So Carl actually has a microphone, so raise your hand, and we can get you that microphone, and you can ask a question.
Hi, this is a very specific question for you all the way on the left. Yes, sorry, too many names. You said that we have access to equipment,
Yes.
but is that exclusively for a specific program?
Mm-mm.
And
So
what
there
equipment?
is a university equipment center on the 9th floor in Arnold Hall, which is on the 13th Street building. So it's where actually the music school is. So that is for campus-wide access, which is both a benefit and sometimes a hindrance, in the sense that you really need to think, like I said, just plan ahead when you know that you need equipment. There's also a film office on the 6th floor, but that's designated specifically for certain classes, so certain production classes. And that's because they already know that the university center, the university equipment center is up for grabs. So you just want to plan ahead, but it is a really convenient process. You fill out a form in the beginning of each semester, so that way you can then have access and can reserve online. I would definitely recommend reserving online when you can and you have the time, because then you can have a checkout of about 4 days, I think up to 4 days. And it's really flexible in the sense you get a 3-hour grace period for returning equipment, and it's included in your tuition, so it's super convenient. Like yesterday I did a shoot, and I pretty much used majority of the gear, aside from my camera, from the equipment center, and I made my reservation online. And they do their best to accommodate you. This is a pretty film and project intensive time because everybody's doing their projects for assignments and before the end of the semester. So there was a lot of things that were gone, but the guy at the equipment center was really, really trying to work with me and being like, okay, well, how can I at least get you what you need for the most part, so you can get out of here and do what you got to do.
I would also add, you have access to the full Adobe Creative Cloud. So once you have an N number and you can log on to My New School, you can actually download the entire Adobe suite. So regardless of which program you're in, maybe you're in Milano, maybe making a podcast makes sense for you. So now you have access to microphones and you have access to editing software. So that could be something that you might want to explore in addition to your study or complementing it. Oh, and the Microsoft
I will
suite.
say one thing. My second semester, my hard drive of my laptop bricked itself in the middle of finals. So I'll do a shout out here for both backing up everything that you do and also the fact that since the new school can offer you licenses for things like Adobe and Microsoft Office products, I was able to get a new computer up and running and get back to passing classes again, which was really great.
Great. There's a question behind you.
Hey guys, I just want to thank you all for speaking so eloquently, and it's been so interesting to hear all of your stories. My question is about career services and how you guys, if you have yet, taken advantage of those services at the new school and sort of what that process has been like.
I know the career services, they offer a whole lot of workshops. They offer a boot camp series where I believe they're offered on Fridays and Saturdays, and you take them consecutively 1, 2, and 3, and they teach you how to, from as basic as writing your resume to doing, mock interviews, how to do your 90-second pitch about yourself, how to really describe what you've done through problem action statements, and your elevator speech. So really they do a really great job at teaching you how to speak about yourself as well as write about yourself. And I know they have a really great reputation. I know there are some alumni that that graduated decades ago and still come back searching for more advice, and the resources are always at your disposal, so I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I think the career services also does a lot of different kind of career fairs that they will congregate into themes. So they've had career fairs that are like nonprofit, for instance, if that's something that you wanted to go into. So it's a little bit more streamlined. And another thing that is past just the career services that I would advise everyone to use as a resource is really the faculty. They are really, really well connected. They have done a really good job at figuring out, I think we've talked about this a little bit in maybe a lot of our sessions, but the faculty are very open to just talking to you about what your concerns are or what your goals are, and they will help you figure that out. So for instance, for my faculty, one of my professors, Peter Hoffman, I worked with him on a project that was for the department, but because of that connection, he was able to connect me to an internship. So that is also another resource that I would highly recommend.
And I'll throw in a word too for the Alumni Network of each program being a really strong resource for finding out about jobs. People who go on to work in the field will usually forward listings to everyone else who's in the alumni or a current student.
I'll also throw to Rokia because our office in the School of Media Studies works really closely with the graduate career services to create events dedicated for our population. So do you remember any of the ones that you've actually moderated and hosted and coordinated?
Yes, yes. Because one of my jobs on campus, I'm a student assistant on the 16th floor for the Media Studies office. And a part of that, my responsibilities is also acting as student council president. So I've been helping out with running events and specifically figuring out what do students want, what do they need, and careers is a big requests on the part of a lot of the students. They really just want to talk to people who are active in the industry, especially with something like media where it's so people-oriented. Like it really is quite honestly about like who you know and what connections you've made to be able to then get the work, because the work is so like, I mean, you can work in corporate spaces, which are probably much more long-term, but if you're here to be more on a project base, or so a producer, director, writer, you're looking at doing more things that are project-based, and so that's like short-term work, so you kind of have to always kind of have a flow of work coming in, and that's really reliant on people. So one of the career panels that we just did was on content creation. So we had people that worked in branding and social media strategizing, data analytics, as well as a freelancer who does artwork and design for various companies. And actually for the fall, we're actually working on right now, myself and Carolyn, who's sitting right there, who works as an advisor as well on the 16th floor. We're working on a career panel series, because one thing we noticed was that we want to get a little bit more, similar to the fairs, which are super specific, we want the panels to get a little more specific because people's interests are so varied, and we want to make sure that people have enough time to actually kind of talk to the people, both in the sense of like hearing their experience, but actually getting to meet them and like talk to them and be like, hey, how do we build a relationship or connections? So yeah.
My question kind of circles back to like the resources that are available here. Have you guys ever encountered a time where you're like working on a project or making something and you find that you have to like look outside of the university for those resources?
I would say that has happened, but only in the sense that so the TESOL program, many of the journals that we want to have access to have been digitized, but not necessarily for free. That you only have access if your school has a subscription. Fortunately, the new schools libraries have a consortium. We are connected with NYU and I believe several other schools. So there's times where I've had to pull a resource and I'm on NYU's website logged in with my new school's ID so that I can connect to Wiley Online Library so that I could download a PDF of an article from 1984. So like sometimes there's a little bit of technological fancy footwork we do to make sure that we get the resources we need. I also on one occasion did get the librarian at the new school library to write me a note for access to Columbia's libraries for the day. And I felt very fancy walking in because that is an old-fashioned library. It looks like a church. So I was happy to be able to have that opportunity.
I will add to that too, with regards to library access and like resource access. If it's something that we don't have, it is very easy to just reach out to a librarian or someone similar and ask them to access it or buy it for the university, and they'll do it. Like they'll get back to you within 1 or 2 days. I've had them buy several books and articles for me because I just wanted to read them and like cite them for class. And they've always been super helpful with that.
I would add, just as Director of Student Affairs, I work with a lot of students who will come into my office and talk to me through some of the problems they have accessing resources or services. And a lot of times, like 9 times out of 10, I'll be like, oh, we have that resource here. You just may not have known about it. So I'll have students who might say, oh, I wish I had a room to organize a meeting. I want to do a casting shoot for media, or I want to organize the pitch for our entrepreneurship and I want to bring some outside folks on. And I'm like, oh, well, the library lets you organize meeting rooms. Okay, great. So we're good on that. So we'll talk through, maybe they need tutors for a specific type of software, or they're international students who want to brush up on their English speaking skills. Well, our University Learning Center provides individual tutoring and conversation circles for both of those. They do Adobe Suite tutoring. They now do tutoring for Python and JavaScript. It's all new. So a lot of it is just connecting with your hubs for resources and problem solving when it is something unique. We do want to make sure students have the resources to be able to achieve their goals here.
I would also add to that to like rely on each other. Like I think that's another thing about it, is that everybody here is like working on something or has access, especially because it's a graduate program. People are also coming in with work experience and connections from before they came to school. So really get into the habit of talking about what you need. and talking about the things that you're working on, because more often than not, there's somebody sitting next to you who can either provide that to you directly or can point you in the right direction. So yeah, just really get into the habit of talking, asking questions, go to people, because the resources are available. Sometimes you just have to, closed mouths don't get fed kind of thing.
Hi, I'm curious, this is a question for all of you. If you came to the school with like very clear expectations of like what you wanted to do, pursue both academically and professionally, and if your time here has like shifted that, enhanced that, and supported that or changed that at all?
I would say, I came in with one very specific idea and then it changed a lot. Like a lot of students, I came in, I already had a job, I had a career, and I thought I just wanted to be better at that specific job, which was managing adult education programs. But through, the connections I made and the encouragement of professors to explore things like research or, curriculum development, I found myself actually leaving the job I had for a different, more classroom-focused job over the course of my studies here. And so now, it's created a lot more questions for me about what the next move is, but in a very good way.
I came in wanting to focus on housing and doing housing policy, which I'm still leaving, wanting to do housing and housing policy. But I think something great about the program as a whole, I think everyone will probably agree with me that, the university really helps you open up your eyes to things and learn about things that you would have never found, would have never have focused on otherwise. I know I've had plenty of opportunities to learn things that are so far off base from housing, but yet have some sort of connection in some way that I managed to make that connection. I had an internship last summer with the Drug Policy Alliance and got to work on some of their campaigns to end criminalization for drugs. And, I think it's not really housing, but you can make connections to housing. So I think you also can find those opportunities and like, I'm interested in this thing, but maybe something else will also be incredibly interesting to you, and, there's plenty of opportunity to find those different pathways.
Any other questions? We have one more, I see right next to Carl.
How did you guys make the decision to come to this school?
I'm glad you asked. I actually made that decision on my admitted students' day 2 years ago. And I went home and made my deposit that same night. And it came out of, there had been a few factors in why I was leaning towards the new school, but I showed up and I was the only person from my program who had shown up for the admitted students' day. But that year's student ambassador and the dean of my program still ran a whole spiel just for me. And, it kind of made me realize that this was a place where you could get one-on-one attention and you would not ever be forgotten or canceled on just because you happened to be the only one with a specific interest set. There was still this amazing outpouring of support and welcome for me. So I made that decision on my admitted students' day.
I kind of had just like a general idea first that I wanted to go to graduate school in New York because my field is in international affairs, and it is really a hub for that sort of activity. But I chose the new school specifically because of its commitment to social justice and how it is really different from the more traditional approaches of other similar programs. So I wanted a program that was very critical, very open-minded, and I wanted the students and the faculty to also represent those values. So that was what really led me to the new school. And the other thing is they also had a really great they also have really great resources for international students, and that was a big deal for me because in my undergraduate institution, I felt a little bit like I had to really search for it, but here, because we have such a varied population, they really cater to all of those different needs, and that was something that really made me feel at home.
I was kind of on the opposite spectrum of that. I was like pretty clear that I wanted to come to the new school. I was fortunate enough once I graduated from school that I had a friend who was completing their degree in the undergraduate in Lang. So I actually ended up spending a lot of time on campus before I actually decided to enroll. So I already knew a lot about like what resources were available for new school students. And I also just walked around and was like, this is so cool. People are actually here working on projects, working on things that they care about. And that was something that like, while I saw that in undergrad, it was a liberal arts school service, kind of like working just to work versus working with a deep sense of intention. And I'm like mentioning this just because like I kind of took a risk in the sense of like just applying to one program and really committing, kind of throwing all my eggs in one basket, but I have not yet to be disappointed. I like am getting exactly what I need from the program in terms of time, in terms of resources, and in terms of connections. And so I've been feeling very grateful about that. I feel a lot more rooted in the path that I want to go down.
Yeah, I was choosing between the New Schools program as well as NYU Wagner's Master's of Urban Planning. And as I came to New York City to kind of have a little bit of a day that I saw both schools, toured around, I felt so incredibly welcomed here. I know Merida went out of her way to give me a personal tour around the campus and, you know, schlepped me around all the wonderful buildings that the campus has. I met with the student ambassador at the time. I spoke with Alex Schwartz, one of the housing gurus that's on campus and teaches. And so yeah, I mean, I felt like it was I felt wanted here. It wasn't like I was trying to get the attention of people here. I felt like it was an environment where, you know, they really welcomed the students. And I hope that all of you feel that way as well. I think that's one of the more important parts, is that a lot of the professors will probably give you that line that, you know, they learn just as much from all of you as you learn from them each and every semester. So yeah, that's why I chose the new school.
Thank you, folks. Do we have one more question? Okay, so I'm actually just I think we're gonna wrap up right now because there's still some more festivities today to get to. But I just did want to echo what Alex mentioned, is that, you know, these programs are designed to be personal. They're designed to be flexible, and they're designed to connect with your goals and resources. So as you're connecting with people at our receptions, as you're connecting with our ambassadors and our admissions folks, ask those questions. Really think and envision yourself here in this program and what it would mean to have the type of program and pathway you want, and see if this is a really good fit for you. We want to help you envision yourself here today and really answer all of your questions. And to that end, I'm going to pass this off to our admissions team, to Merida, who will take it from here.
Thank you. Robbie, I want to thank you for facilitating today's panel, and panelists and student ambassadors, thank you for sharing, being forthright and candid about your experiences and making a very important decision. We'll be heading down to our reception shortly. I just want to introduce two individuals who I want to make sure you get to know at the reception. You get to know all of us. But if you have financial aid questions, scholarship, Ivanelli Raphael and Rick Joseph Benitez here will be joining us. There'll be a nice way for you to hold a glass of beverage and something to nosh on while you're asking them about financial aid. All right, just one big next step that I want to talk about, which is April 19th is the confirmation deadline for students who receive their admission decisions at the end of February through the beginning of March, through about middle of March or so. If you've just been recently admitted, you may have a few days longer than that. But there'll be lots of information about how to submit your deposit. It's a $500 non-refundable deposit. Once that is done, please, you'll be on the lookout for communication about a new student email account. That will be the main way with which we communicate with you about registration, advising, upcoming events, orientation. Classes start on Monday, August 26th. There is an orientation the week before. And so lots of others next steps, but the major next step is certainly to confirm your intent to enroll, to join us in the fall. Carl, Gabriella, myself, all my colleagues here, Robbie, everyone who's here from the new school is available to answer your question. We want to make sure you have as clear information about the next step that you're going to make. Thank you so much for spending a Sunday afternoon with us. Come downstairs to Star Foundation. There'll be goodies for you to eat and drink and conversation. All right, and we'll see you downstairs. All right, thank you again, everyone.